All right, what is going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Blaklist podcast. If you are tuning in with us for the very first time today, let me go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Jared Blaine. We are missing Brianna, Elizabeth, and Swag tonight. Without further ado, today's guest is a recovery advocate. He's a hip-hop artist, a licensed clinical addiction specialist. You may have seen his viral video that he calls the Toilet Testimony, which has over 1 million views on social media, where he was documenting his fentanyl withdrawal. Joining us all the way from Columbia, South Carolina, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome to the show, Fleetwood.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it, man. And you summed it up as well as I could. I'm a grateful recovering addict. You know, I've got a couple different titles, but my title today is a grateful guest on your show.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming. Listen, I'm transparent with people. So we recorded last week. We recorded last week, and I get a text from him the next day. What did you say?
I think I preface it saying, you're gonna think I'm crazy, and I've said that 1,000 times, but it was just for those tuning in, I told my story, and it just didn't feel right. We talk about that God wink moment, and for me, Jay, I just think it wasn't reflective of where I really am, at this point. So we're going to run it back.
Yeah. Nah, man, I appreciate it. I appreciate you being transparent and honest. Some people, they probably wouldn't even, you know what, it is what it is. But I think we got a good vibe, and I appreciate, being able to do this and man, just really just get into it. And honestly, bro, like, this is just going to be like wherever the spirit leads it,
100%, man. That's my MO, at work and in life in general is, if God compels us to speak on something, we'll speak on it.
Yeah, exactly. So, all right, man. So since you kind of thought of the whole thing, why don't you start us off? Why don't you let us know kind of just what's going on in your mind? What do you want to start off on?
Yeah. So, for those who are just kind of meeting me and hearing my story, I was an addict from age 14 to 28. Last episode, I went in every detail, probably too much detail, but long story short, I ran the gamut. I had a lot, I lost a lot. I did a lot of drugs and then I couldn't do any drugs. So, I got clean when I was 28 by the grace of God. And now I'm 33. I'm about 5 years in recovery. I work as a licensed clinical addiction specialist, which is a fancy way to say I'm a counselor. And I work in South Carolina, at an inpatient facility. And I think today, Jay, we'll kind of riff back and forth, but I want to talk about the G word, and that's God. And I think something that hopefully we can navigate is what it means to us. I think that's really important.
Right.
It's a journey. It's not a destination, and one size necessarily doesn't fit all. But let's get it popping. See where it takes us.
So, all right. So what is God to you? Because God is God can be a higher power. It can be anything to everybody. But since we're talking about it, all right. Who's God to you? What's your perception? And then I'll tell you mine.
Sure. How much time we got? Because this,
bro. No, we're good. We got like an hour and a half, bro. We're good. That's why I wanted to start earlier, because I knew that this was probably going to be a longer episode, which I'm completely fine with. So
sure. So just some pretext and some context. I studied philosophy, in college, and I went to the Clemson University. So I've got a little bit different approach. And truth be told, this question has really haunted me before addiction, and certainly during addiction, is why are we here? How do I navigate pain? How do I navigate adversity? Why does it happen? I think that's something that we all deal with, is why me? And so really the first point of discussion, I look at religion, so full disclosure, I'm not religious, but I do think there's value in analyzing religion. And from my perspective, if we can find the common thread between religions, there might be truth, in the common thread. And so I took notes, man. I told you I'm prepared today. So
there you go.
Here's the definition of a religion. And this is kind of important. It's a pursuit or interest to which someone ascribes supreme importance. And so that's key. And so what we look at is Islam, bam, Christianity. We look at Buddhism, we look at Hinduism, and really the argument can be made that AA is a religion, based on that definition. So I took some notes, trying to see what's in common. So Christianity, an identified image of God in human beings in intellectual capability and faculty of perception, right? Buddhism, an interconnectedness is the true nature of all beings. We are not only connected to other people, but to the air through our breathing and to the universe through light. And then Hinduism, we are all one and thus radically interconnected with all being. The self or soul within all is connected. And then, as you know, brother, AA, the opposite of addiction is connection. And so here's kind of the deal. And guys, this is just my perspective. This is my definition, is the thing that connects all those things is a radical connection to people, a radical connection to people. And I'm sure you've heard this, bro, but, I have some residents who say, well, Lane, that doorknob is my higher power. And I'll just be forthright. I think that's a poor definition. I don't think that is a true guiding principle. Because it's of the
Somebody
earth.
used that on me earlier today.
Absolutely.
About the doorknob. That exact comment.
And I get it. I mean, look, break it down. It's outside our control. It's there if we choose to interact with it. It's, there's all these principles that go into it. But when I look at a higher power, it needs to be something higher. And when you look at a doorknob, that's of the earth. That's a man-made principle. And so in the context of addiction disrupts connection. Right. So we've got all this radical interconnectedness that we have to seek. And our addiction really detaches us from each other. It becomes our God. We become our God. And in that sense, we isolate, and we lose that touch with higher power. So for me, the battle has always been how to connect to people, how to connect on an intimate, radical level. And so to answer your question, I have to look at things pretty logistically. And so here's what I mean by that. When you hear the word God, and when I was a kid, I did this too. What's the number one argument against God? And you always
the number one argument. I don't know, the devil. I don't know.
Well, the one that I used is, well, if God's real, why do kids suffer? You hear this all the time.
Now that I get it, yeah.
Yeah, why does a kid have cancer? If God is altruistic and omniscient and omnipresent, why would a kid suffer? So let's kind of slow it down for a second. And here is the system of navigation that I have to use is pain can lead to vulnerability. Vulnerability can lead to radical connection. And so I think sometimes as addicts, we look at pain as something that happens against us or to us, when really the approach from a higher power spiritual point of view is pain happens for us. Now we have to work through it and accept it and navigate it. But when I'm vulnerable about my pain, then I have a better opportunity to connect to somebody on a meaningful level. And so we look at a testimony, and I'm going to try to keep this succinct for you. But we look at a testimony, Jared, you and I aren't having this conversation without pain. I'm not able to relate, right? I'm not able to relate to people without pain. And so I think what's really important to understand is pain is motivating. Pain is something that builds our testimony, uniquely equips us, to help ourselves and to help that next person. But we have free will. And so for us as people and made in his image, we've got to meet God 50-50. And that's when we can really impact change and help that next person. So to me, pain is pretty logistical, and it's got great utility.
I want to say something on pain.
Sure.
So we had Brian Rucker from Duck Dynasty. He came on and I wrote three quotes down that he said. So I'm gonna look at them. So pain produces promise.
Yeah.
Adversity breeds advancement. And sometimes the step back is a step up for the come up. And so what I want to take it back to though is pain produces promise.
That's right.
Okay. You can't, what do they say? No pain, no gain, this and that. So it's kind of like, okay. And then adversity breeds advancement. So we have to go through the pain. We have to go through all this crap to be able to advance further on into our walk And so that's just I wanted to chime in on that because
Yeah.
I wrote it down on my calendar and it's been there for like a month and I just leave it there because it's something I always like if I look over, if I'm, dealing with pain, this, that, and then I look over, okay, pain produces promise.
Mm,
I'm going to use that.
mm,
I'm going to use my pain and I'm going to fuel it
mm.
and I'm going to just, okay, let's advance
Yeah.
and use it to fuel the fire.
Yeah. Absolutely. I love that, man. Pain produces promise. I'm definitely going to keep that and use that. So,
Keep it, brother.
when we kind of pull it back a little bit, we look at addiction, Jared. It's a disease of thought. It's a disease of thinking. We almost get addicted to our thoughts. And so what ends up happening is we become victims in our own mind. And so we look at these losses, we look at this adversity, we look at this pain. And oftentimes what we do is we victimize ourselves. Well, God, which is easy and natural to do, Lane, I lost my child. Why would God do this to me? That's not a God I want to serve. Or, Lane, I've been an addict. I can't get clean. I've lost my whole family. Why would God do this to me? That's not a God I want to serve. And what people fail to understand is God is trying to equip you to set footprints for the next person to follow. And so when we talk about God's army, right, I mean, I take that fairly literally. And what I mean by that is, he is preparing you for the person he needs you to be. Right. And that's an ongoing process. So I think for you and I, we're faith in action is, I'm here because of my past. You're here because of your past. And we have a uniqueness about us that allows us to help the next wave or the next individual who's trying to navigate addiction.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can already tell you, and you already know this episode ain't going to be for everybody.
Sure.
But, I'm titling this The G Word. That's going to be the title of this episode.
I love it.
I'm like, you know what? All right, I got it. But yeah, man, like my thing is I'm not I'm a spiritual person. I believe in God. I fully believe in everything. I mean, I grew up in church. Man, I grew up, my grandparents took me to church every Sunday, every Wednesday. I was in Royal Rangers. Like, I grew up in church. So I know scripture. I know the word. I mean, I was going to school to be a youth pastor at one point.
Wow.
I was going to seminary and all that other, and I ran into some experiences that turned me away, essentially. But I never, even though that I turned away from the people in the church, not God, but the people, I never turned from God.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Like, I've always fully believed I'm here because of God. You're here because of God. The person listening or watching, you're here because you're higher power. You may not call it God, and that's okay. But you are here because you're higher powers. I had this conversation with somebody earlier. They were saying that a lot of we're here because of a God or a higher power. And she goes, I hear these people that always say, oh, well, I did it all by myself. And it was all me and my higher power had nothing to do with it. But did it really? Did it really? Because how did you get that strength? Sure. I mean, come on, man. We've been to the depths of the deepest. And like, bro, like, do not tell me, at least for me, you can't sit there and tell me that the hell I walked through for 15 years on and off, everything that I've done, and I got sober and I'm sitting here today talking to you. You cannot tell me that was not because of monkeys. It's because of my higher power, which is God.
Sure.
And so that's where I'm at so I fully believe. I don't go to church, I don't read, but I have my own personal relationship with God, and that's my personal walk that I don't push on anybody.
Sure.
I believe, and that's something I do, but like Brianna doesn't. That's like so we have different opinions when it comes to that, but it's still like I don't push it on her, and she doesn't push it on me.
Yeah.
I'm not saying she doesn't believe in God, but she just chooses not to walk down that path.
The following PSA is brought to you by The Phoenix. The Phoenix is not just a gym, it's a community where the real weight lifted is not just barbells, but hearts, minds, and spirits. Whether you're in recovery or simply choose to live a sober lifestyle, The Phoenix offers a range of activities from yoga to hiking, all led by people who've walked the path of transformation. So why not aim higher with The Phoenix? The first membership requirement is just 48 hours of sobriety. Rise from the ashes and soar with the phoenix today. Do you know about naloxone, otherwise known as Narcan? This life-saving medication can reverse an opioid overdose in minutes. You might think, I don't need it, I'm not around opioids. But the truth is, you never know when you'll be in a situation where you could save a life. It's easy to use, and in many places offer it for free or at a low cost. So let's be prepared and look out for each other. Remember, you might not plan on being around opioid use, but you never know when it will be around you, and you could save the life of somebody that loves and is loved. I'm Chuck LaFlange with the Ashes to Awesome podcast, and remember, you are loved.
And you know, I'm kind of like you, where I grew up and my grandpa was a preacher. And so, you know, I've got a little bit of it in me, I guess. That's what people say. But, you know, when I went to church as a kid, you know, I disconnected from God. I really didn't buy into it. And I think what the church does a poor job of is attributing meaning. You know, when you go to church, it's ritualistic. You know, you're doing hymns and communion, and it's really important that people are connected to their community. But I needed more specific guidance. I mean, I remember being a young boy sitting there going, okay, you know, we're reading Matt, Mark, Luke, and John. But, you know, what do I do with the bully at school? You know, how do I navigate my relationships? You know, how do I navigate these thoughts that I'm having? And the advice was always give it to God. And I think, you know, that was frustrating for me. And so just to clarify, if you're watching this episode, we're not indoctrinating you. We're not telling you what to believe in. But I will say this definitively. Life demands faith. Life demands faith. Now, the free will part is you could put it in a person, you can put it in a process, you can put it in a church, you can put it in a doorknob. But the reality is that if you want purpose and fulfillment and meaning and virtue and principle, you have to demonstrate faith. So for me, I can only speak for my system and what works for me to navigate pain, loss, and adversity. And you know as well as I do, you got to have it. For some people, you know, they're nihilists and they kind of go through the motions, and then eventually the adversity demands faith. Their circumstances demand faith and acceptance. Yeah. And so those are kind of the principles. So God, your original question, I can only speak for myself, but for me, I have to keep it logistical. I have to keep it mathematical. And so for me, pain creates vulnerability. Vulnerability creates a more meaningful connection. And so anytime I go through pain, what an opportunity, right? To grow through it, to go through it, and then to reinvest it and connect myself with it. Now, the God thing for me, you know, and this is going to be controversial to some people, but I think we misconceive it. And so for me personally, it's generally labeled intuition. It's generally labeled my conscience. You know, I think when we look at that definition, according to the Bible, it's an identified image of God in human beings only in intellectual capability and in faculty of perception. So for me, I'm not of the thinking that I come up with my thoughts. That's a traditional idea, is that I produce thoughts. I produce my own conceptions. You know, Jared, at this point in my recovery and in my journey as a man and a father, you know, I'm not fully convinced that I really come up with any of my thoughts. Now, God to me is good, orderly direction. GOD. That's what it stands for. And so here's the free will part. We all have that frequency. When you look at the worst people, Jeffrey Dahmer, he will be the first to tell you, I knew what I was doing was wrong, but I couldn't stop. And we as addicts, you know as well as I do, you could be stealing change from your grandma or doing something really nefarious, but you still know in your core, in your spirit, that this thing is wrong. Now, here's where the free will comes in. We have free will with our habits. We have free will with the lifestyle choices that we make. Whether you eat well, you exercise, you connect yourself to meaningful people, places, and things, that internal voice will strengthen or weaken. And so for me personally, that's about it. You know, I trust myself, which is a reflection of God. The conscience may be something more divine. My intuition may be something more divine. My role in it is to live my life spiritually, emotionally, mentally, and physically to where I can be more in touch with that internal, good, orderly direction. And so, you know, that's my faith, is that my hobbies, my consistency, my habits will give me the things I need, which is far from the things I want. Right. And so
Yeah.
that's the purpose, is the purpose of my habits, the purpose of my pain. And what's my end of the deal? Well, my end of the deal is to be available, give maximum effort, and make a couple of sacrifices.
Yeah. Yeah, I was you kind of said it earlier on when we're going through these. Okay, so think about it. When we're going through storms in our life and stuff goes bad, what's the first thing we say? Why, God?
Sure.
Why did you allow this to happen to me? And the way that I've learned is to try to change your verbiage on it, one, but and then change your thought, because instead of being why am I going through this? And I know you probably heard this before. You change it to, what can I learn from this? Instead of questioning why and being pitiful, okay, what am I trying? What is God trying to teach me right now?
No
What
question.
do I need? What is that? And so, but yeah, man, like you in the very beginning, bro, it's the same. Like, why are kids dying from cancer? Why are
Of course.
parents murdering their kids? Why are kids being sexually molested?
Of
Coming
course.
from it happening to me as a child, but no one ever sits here and stops and be like, well, how come Satan's doing this? And how come Satan's doing that? And it's like, you got to think, bro, there's a heaven, there's a hell, there's a God, there's a devil. Like, but nobody ever sits and thinks that. No one sits there. It's always, why, God? Why?
Yeah.
And so, I don't know, for me, the whole church thing, it was like, the thing that pushed me away was when the pastor's tithing for for $1,000 rims on his car. When they make worship into this whole smoke show and makeup and all this stuff, compared to being like, bro, I'll tell you this, man. I've been to some mega churches. I've been to some mega churches, and they do the whole shebang. Makeup. They got to make sure they got a whole director in the back and all that. And then this had 20,000 people. And then I've been to a church where there's 10 people, an old Southern gospel church, little building. And I tell you, that worship was more powerful
No
than
question.
20,000 people that are mimicking Hillsong United and this, that, and the third.
No question.
So for me, I started seeing the authenticity was like, it's not there. Like, I'm like, and I just found the hypocriticalness and this and that. I'm sleeved out in tattoos.
Sure.
So one of the first things that started pushing me away was, like I was telling you, I was, going to school to be a youth pastor. I wanted to help just because of my past and all that stuff. When, I got married at 19 years old, I had my first kid at 18. I got married at 19. My ex-wife, at the time, she was 16. I was 18. And then I had just turned 19. Her mom was like religious, was like, listen, the only way you're moving in together is if you guys get married. So naturally, my first kid, I'm just like, let's do it.
Yeah.
And so it did it. And she's got full of tattoos and all that other stuff too. And so, we did the whole church thing for a while. Every Sunday, every Wednesday, and I was doing this. And then I remember I applied to a certain church for the youth pastor job. And I was, and the guy talked to me and whatnot, and he kind of felt me out. And then he called, references and like my father-in-law at the time, and this and the third. But I got denied because of my tattoos,
Sure.
and two, because we had a child out of, essentially, even though we were married when he was pregnant, or when he was we were married when she was pregnant. But she got pregnant first, and then a couple months later. So, and after he went and did his background and all that, and he was talking to her dad at the time, and blah blah blah, and he's just like, no, I can't do it. And I'm like, and then he tries to like bring up like, how good of a life is my child gonna have because I'm tattooed and I got married at a young age.
Wow,
and, bro, that turned me off. I'll tell you 100%. That's when I started to sit there and was like, are you kidding me? Like, God is love. God is love. this is not God. This is not what God would want, and I don't know, man. So like that kind of started my first downfall on it. So again, I never fall away from God itself, but from the church and man in the church,
Sure.
I was like, nah, I'm not doing this because you you are no greater of a person to tell me X, Y, and Z.
Sure.
Like no, like you don't know my life, you don't know that, and here I am trying to help people and want to do something, and no, because I got tattoos, because I got married at some young age, because I had a kid, like
Sure. And I think, I will say this, I'm not a religious person, but the church can get a little bit of bad rap. I know there's great people in church and they do a lot for the community, but unfortunately, when there's a bad seed in church, it's like a bad
it
police,
spreads
it's
like
like a bad
wildfire.
cop.
Yeah.
People feel it and you know it. And so I'm glad that you brought up Satan. Yeah, I think what's important is the principles, of a lot of these definitions and words and concepts. So
Yeah.
to me, this is how I view it: is Satanism is not cutting a goat's head or 666 or blood coming out your eyes.
Mm.
I think sometimes Hollywood portrays it that way, but to me, Satanism is anything of the earth above the spirit. And so you certainly see this in church. You see this in AA. You see this in Walmart. But it's when people place items, materials, other people above the spirit and above that divine voice that's within all of us, and above that spiritual journey. So for me, we go back to pain. And I think the way that God operates in my life and how I feel and how I view it is when I was an addict, I became my God and drugs became my God. And so to bring me into purpose and to develop me as a servant, God took everything away, and that's really important, because when storms come, some destroy and some create. And so a lot of the storms in addicts' lives and in people who have suffered immense adversity is it clears their path. And so for me, my storm cleared my path. I couldn't see that at the time, but he took everything away so that I had to lean more heavily on him and form a more meaningful relationship with him, which really, you can look at it this way, form a relationship with myself. Because if we're going to go with that definition of God is within us, God is our voice, God is our conscience, God is our intuition, then by loving yourself, you're loving God. Now, the other side is when we're in active addiction, we disrespect ourselves. And so following that same line of thought, you're disrespecting your maker. And so this is not a religious connotation, but it's really important to, I think, coalesce this idea of God with this idea of our self-worth, of our self-image, of a source of infinite love, a source of infinite opportunities. And addiction comes to seek, destroy, and kill. And so for me, I know that I became God in my own mind. The drugs became God. And so in order for me to walk into purpose and live, God put me in the corner and said, I'm going to take it all away from you so that we have to restore you to sanity, which is really restore my faith and acceptance and relationship with a higher power.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. Do you go to church or no?
So I do, but, and I'll be fully honest with you. I wasn't a 12-step guy. For me, I studied it. I read about it. I learned about it. That's kind of what set me down the path to be a counselor. But I take every opportunity to connect to people because in my world, that brings me closer to God. So if I can connect with you on this podcast, that brings me closer and strengthens my internal voice and strengthens my internal intuition and conscience and relationship with God. So when my mama asked me to go to church, I used to say, hell no, because they're crazy and they're ritualistic and they want my money and all this stuff. But when my mom asks me now, I say absolutely, because what an opportunity to connect to my mother. Same with AA. I'm not big on the 12 steps. I practice the principles. And so let's not get that twisted. I mean, I've practiced a program and principles and things, but I was never big on the ritual stuff. Just me. That's just me. But when somebody asks me, I say absolutely, because what an opportunity to connect to people, which for me strengthens my relationship with God as I understand him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, God was really big in the beginning of my recovery.
Sure.
Like you said, I never lost faith. Of course, we had to lose everything and be as deep down in our addiction as possible to realize the power of what he can do. But
Sure.
I was not a 12-step guy, not a AA, not a NA. Celebrate Recovery was mine. I don't know if you know CR.
Absolutely.
Yep. So like that was the big, like my uncle was, he was going to CR and he invited me and I started going and it was huge. It was really, really huge. And again, and it wasn't like this, I'm not like this big spiritual, like religious person or anything, but I really I felt more comfortable there than I did in an NA meeting.
Sure.
I was very, I mean, dude, I play drums, I'm a musician. I told you before,
Yeah.
and I play drums and I started playing on the worship team for, for the CR and doing a lot of the product behind the scenes stuff and whatnot. And I really, I started, actually, I went and, started a group on inside the prison. I did CR inside. I ran it for a group of inmates
Wow.
and like I was heavily involved in that.
Sure.
But that was my program. That was my program. And again, if people that know CR, they don't, it's essentially the same thing, that it's the same principles that in the AA practices, but they replace their higher power with God.
Sure.
And again, and then you have the 12 steps and the 8 principles. And the verbiage is different when it comes to the steps, but at the end of the day, it's the principles. And so I follow the principles I just was never, man, like I don't know why, and I feel bad when I say it, but like AA and NA was just not my thing. And I'm not knocking anybody, but it's
Right.
just it really wasn't. I felt a lot of hypocriticalness in those rooms. And so and again, but that goes back to the whole church thing, the hypocrites and this, that, and the third. So
Sure.
CR, I'll tell you this, CR was probably the only place that I could really go that was in a church setting that I felt comfortable and did not feel judged. And I did not feel, like if I walked into a service, regular church, it'd probably be judged left and right for, being a drug addict and being tattooed and this and that and the third. But
Sure.
you go there and it's just like, it's just a bunch of broken people just like us.
Sure.
And it's not only substance. It's hurt, habit, or hangups. It's for everything. Because we know, again, let's break that down too. We know that addiction isn't just substance related.
Sure.
Technology, food, gambling, shopping, this, that, and the third. So that's what I liked about it that NA and AA didn't offer. They focused on the substance part of it. The CR focused on the whole changing your patterns, changing your behavior patterns, like just doing, because again, we have to treat this, bro. We have to treat the root of it. We can't just go to rehab. We have to treat the root of the problem. Because if we don't treat the root of the problem and we just go to rehab and we get sober and then leave, it's a constant cycle. So treating and so for me, that's what CR helped lead me into, was helping treat the root of the problem. And again, I'm far from perfect, guys. I still got a hell of a long way to keep doing it, but that was my experience, and when you brought this up to me about wanting to do it, we were talking about, how religion and higher powers and God and all that has helped us get through, in different parts of our life within our recovery and whatnot. That was mine.
Yeah. And for the record, I say the word God, I used to say the universe, but that's worse. So this word God, I mean, don't get so hyper focused on that word. I think it triggers some people,
right?
Which
because they're thinking of a Christian God,
sure.
like and it's like, listen, no, because there's gods in every religion.
Sure.
If you think about it.
Well, and it's just, again, I'm gonna keep saying this, guy. It's a system of acceptance, a system of faith, and a system to help navigate pain and adversity. And you gotta have it. I mean, I tell our residents that, look, I can only speak to my journey. You guys are on your own path, but here's the deal: is you've got to have faith. And so let's kind of switch gears a little bit, and we'll get to the addiction component of it. I know for me, Jared, I think sometimes as addicts, like we romanticize who we were before substances. And so when I look who I was before substances, I wasn't who I needed to be. I wasn't who God needed me to be. I was cynical. I was narcissistic. I was self-seeking. I was sarcastic. I I was all those things, which I still am, but now I can manage it, and I have guiding principles that lead to ethical, esteemable acts. And so that's a huge difference. And so for me, long story short, addiction didn't happen to me. Addiction happened for me. It humbled me. It allowed me to reevaluate myself. It gave me a system of self-improvement. It gave me a definition of my higher power. It helped make peace with my past to pave a path to purpose. So say that 5 times fast. It allowed me to make peace with my past that paved a path to purpose. And it's a linear, direct path. And so according to my thinking and my philosophies, I think your pain can be a guiding principle. Now, I'm not saying you got to be a therapist or work in the field of social work, but I am a huge believer that God gives you things you can handle. God never says, oops. God never overwhelms you. God knows what you can do and that you can testify and that you can be uniquely equipped to help the next person. So don't overthink that. If you're listening to this and you're a veteran and you have PTSD, God needs you to work a program of acceptance so that you can help the next vet. And whether that's in the streets, whether that's in the classroom, same with me and you, Jared, your faith in action, brother. That's a huge reason I came on here and a huge reason I respect you and a huge reason we're doing a second one of these interviews is you have used your pain to guide your purpose and to forge a path. And so I think that's really important. Do not overthink. Addiction wants you to overthink. The devil wants you to overthink. The devil wants to plant seeds of doubt and shame and guilt. And your addiction wants you to stay silent, because if you stay silent, you're obedient to the devil. You're obedient to evil forces and the negative ways of thinking. And so when we say speak your truth, go tell it on the mountain, God needs you to speak your truth and to testify to people, because by testifying and testifying and testifying and testifying and testifying, you do find more peace. You do find more acceptance. And before you know it, you don't have to say it as much. And then before you know it, people are asking you how you did it. People are asking you for guidance. People are asking you for help. And that's purpose. And so for a lot of people listening to this, hey, look, here's the deal. If you feel suicidal, here's what God needs you to do. Tell everybody. Go tell it on the mountain. Reach out to your mom, your dad. If you're going through PTSD, reach out to every single person in your network and then some. If you're going through addiction, same thing, because that is your testimony. And so we have to really be mindful of what we're going through, why we're going through. We say this to the residents all the time. What is your why? If you can't answer why I'm in treatment and why I want to get clean, it's going to be a little, it's going to be tough. It's going to really be tough. So, I think for everybody listening to this, I can only describe God according to myself and according to how I view it and how I feel and what's worked for me to get to this point. But you need a system. You're going to have to demonstrate faith at some point, whether that's reaching out to people and speaking your truth or going to a program and speaking your truth. That is faith in action. Just by going to a place and trying to get help, you are demonstrating faith. So speak your truth. For Jared, it was, start a podcast. For me, it was become a clinician. But there's 1,000 ways to skin a cat. But you use your testimony. Your testimony is going to use you.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I'm huge on your figuring out your why. And that goes more than just treatment and addiction and all that. It's everybody's got a why. Everybody that's on this planet has got a why. It's up to us to figure that out. We have to figure that out. People, if be honest, you guys are listening to this, what's your really stop and question yourself? What's my why? Because some people probably never even thought about it. I'm just here living life.
Sure.
Didn't think. What's your why? And for me, I believe that I had, people say they go behind everything. I always ask this question in addiction, in recovery, if you had to do it all over again, would you do it? 100%. Because it's turned into my why. I would not 100%. Be sitting. I'll just tell you straight up, bro. I will not be sitting here today having this conversation with you, being able to do this as my why if I didn't go through that.
Absolutely.
Now I can't say what God had planned. That But that's just the way that I look at it, bro. Like
Mm.
everything was designed to work the way that it was, no matter how hard it was, no matter how dangerous it was, no matter this or that. Because it's same thing with you, bro. Every single thing that you went through, every step you took, everything led you to here, this moment.
Mm.
And that leads me to believe my why. What's my why? This is my why. My why is to help. I vowed, bro, when I got clean, I vowed to help as many addicts as I can that were suffering. I wanted to reach out and help every lost soul like I was. And that's my why. 100%. If you wanted to ask me what's my why am I here? This is my why. And I fully stand on it. And everything that has happened during these last couple of years, especially this last year, has just confirmed that this is what God had planned for me.
No question.
Because every door opening, I'll tell you, bro, I'll tell you 100%. In March, I was, no, March. So in summertime, dude, I was done. I was burnt out from this. I was depressed. I was just done. I literally told Brianna and I told Swag, I was like, dude, I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. Like, I really don't. And they just kept telling me, hold on, just hold on, bro. You know, because again, it's you're doing all this work and you're just like, okay, is this what it is? You know, and I'll tell you though, it took me until just recently to figure out this is my why. But I was, dude, I was done. I was like, I don't want to do this no more. I'm sick and tired of, you know, again, let my human emotions take over. You know, I don't get the views, we don't get the shares, you know, this and that. And I'm not trying to like say that's what, but again, I'm a human, and I'll be the first to admit,
Sure,
it discouraged me. And bro, I tell you, like within 3 weeks of after just coming back into it, it's been nonstop. And every door has been opening. Man, I just, you know, like I said, I shared with you before, you know, I had an opportunity to travel to Connecticut and be on Ian Bick's podcast, Locked In with Ian Bick. I mean, that was probably the biggest thing of my career, quote unquote, that has happened. You know, I've been able to have the opportunity to meet amazing people such as yourself, create relationships with other, you know, brothers and sisters, you know, in this recovery community. I've been given opportunities and chances that that would never have ever been happened to me if I did not hit recovery. So for me, I truly believe this is what God had destined for me this whole entire time, which is why everything in the past that I ever done failed. Everything always failed. And I thought this was another failure. Nah, bro. So now I know, like, 2024, like, this is lit. We're just getting started. So that's my testimony when it comes to this.
Thanks for sharing, man. Yeah, you know, for me, my addiction, just to kind of segue off your thing, Jay, is a disease of more. You know, I kind of got through the substance part and dealt with the cravings and triggers and high risk situations and made peace with the substances. But my spiritual battle, and a lot of people's spiritual battle, is more. You know, I remember, you know, when I became a tech, right? I had a master's degree, making $13 an hour as a tech, you know, at this facility. My line of thinking was, how do I become a counselor? I remember day one as a tech, I'm looking at the counselors going, all right, how do I become a counselor? My first day as a counselor was, how do I become CEO? Right? So that's the sickness. The sickness is, when I get this job, I'll have joy and peace. When I get this car, I'll have joy and peace. When I get in this position, right, I'll have joy and peace. And so for me personally, that is my disease. That is my sick thinking, is that I need to be in this place to be an example. And the reality is that I need to bloom where I'm planted. And so a lot of that goes back to faith. You know, my ego tells me I deserve something. I'm entitled to something. I've worked and done the process and done the steps and made amends. And so I deserve to be at a certain place. That's ego. And so when we look at God and faith in the process, God's going to give you what you want, which is often far different than what you need. And so for me, that gap between what I want and what I need is faith. Now, you mentioned, your purpose of serving people. The term that we use is ethical egoism, because here's the deal. People say I'm compassionate. I hope so. I hope I'm definitely more compassionate, but as well as I do, I help people so I can get good sleep at night. I help people so that I have more confidence, so I feel more valuable, so I have more self-worth, right? And so the irony with helping people is it creates more opportunities for yourself. And so that's the ethical egoism part. Now, here's what frustrates me, just on a personal aside, is, I meet a lot of residents and a lot of people of faith, and their line of thinking is, God, send me a sign, right? Send me a sign. Am I doing the right thing? Am I in the right place? The problem is they want God to reveal himself in a grandiose fashion. So what do they want? They want a rainbow. They want a billboard. They want a Hollywood production. And the frustrating thing for me is what people fail to recognize is while they're looking for a sign, you've had 10 people approach you and ask you how you doing, how your day's going, and if there's anything they can do to help you. And so in my experience, God works through people. And so this podcast, this has little to do with me and little to do with you, Jared. This is not a coincidence, right? These are two people who have fought against the odds, who have used their pain as purpose, and are now sharing and strengthening each other's testimony and testifying about our own journey. So, that's critical, is that spirituality to me is a Rubik's Cube. It looks damn complicated, but once you find a couple rules and systems that work for you, things lock into place. Things aren't as scary. Pain isn't as overwhelming. And some of the situations that seem completely unmanageable now suddenly become manageable, because you can break them into pieces and lean on your networks and understand why things happen for you, not necessarily to you. So for me, it's my faith is that I'm going to live my life a certain way. I'm going to have principles. I'm going to try to be honest, try to have integrity, try to be willing, try to be open-minded, try to make good sacrifices. I'm going to make sure my actions line up with my principles. And my faith is that God will give me the things I need when I need them, right? Could be 10 years, could be never, could be 30 years, but that for me is faith. I'm going to be where I need to be with the people I need to be with.
Yeah, you keep going with the same drive, whether it's going to take 10 years or 30 years.
Sure.
Because like I said, everything in life is not a coincidence. Like you said, bro, this isn't a coincidence that we're sitting here doing this podcast.
Sure.
I truly, I think it's, to you that's listening or watching, it's not a coincidence that you're just here. You didn't just stumble across it. I believe God, higher power, whatever you want to call it, strategically placed the feed right in front of you, this, that, and the third. We all come across each other. Everybody that we meet's for a reason. Okay, you're either a blessing or you're a lesson.
Sure.
Okay, every single person that we meet is for a reason. So I didn't hit you up and you hit me back and we did this for nothing. Like so.
Absolutely.
But again, for the person that's listening and watching, like, faith. You got to step out on faith, believe in it, because you have the power to pave that path. Like you put one foot forward and you just keep going and accept it. And again, don't get so caught up on God, on this G word. You don't get caught up on it. Like people think, oh, they're talking about God, they're preaching next, I'm not listening to it. Oh, bro, no. Just have faith. Again, at the end of the day, it's
how
faith.
Do you accept your past and your present and your future? And so I've actually got some scripture. And so for those who are listening, I'm most familiar with the Bible. So don't conflate the scripture with dogma or trying to indoctrinate. But I thought this was a really cool part of the scripture. The Bible says that suffering a person endures is not proportional to their sin. In John's gospel, Jesus encounters a man who was blind from birth. And I quote, "It was not that this man sinned or that his parents sinned, but that works of God might be displayed in him." And you hear my son back there. He's testifying in his own way. But
he's speaking in tongues.
That's right. That's right, man. Exercise this boy. But that's really important. The works of God might be displayed in him. How else will we know you have faith unless you got to have faith? How else will you need a relationship with God unless you need a relationship with God? So I think a lot of this stuff boils down to actions. I'll just be completely honest. I think the faith is in the actions. Do not overthink.
Yeah.
Do not overcomplicate. You need a divine routine. You need a divine set of habits. And sometimes that purpose lies in the daily, menial, mundane tasks that are repeated over and over and over and over and over. And I'll say this, if you're listening to this podcast and you're suffering and you're in pain, you need to understand that God never says oops, and God never makes mistakes, and God thinks you are uniquely equipped to be able to handle it.
Yeah.
And that's
Yep.
really important, but you have to walk into your purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, remember, faith without works is dead.
That's right.
So just like you said, action. That's the other thing. Faith without works is dead. You can't sit there and just, all right, I'm waiting for it to fall in my lap. You got to work it. Just like your program, just like your sobriety, you got to work it. You got to work faith just as much, because that's the only thing that's going to get you through.
Yeah.
It's the only thing that's going to make tomorrow okay.
And you know, it's no question. And you know, just like we're doing here, seek opportunities to connect. You know, that's really, really important, is find avenues of meaningful, healthy, divine connection. And so, you know, don't focus on its church, focus on its church. You know, these are people I can maybe connect, or it's AA. No, it's AA. You know, let's go in there, let's talk to some people, connect, and try to get a nugget of wisdom or a nugget of testimony that can strengthen my own testimony and my own relationship with myself and with the higher power.
Right.
So, you know, I think that, you know, you have to find a system that works for you. You know, this has really just been a riff on what's worked for Jared and what's worked for Fleetwood. But I will say this, nihilism will lead to an unfulfilling life. And if you're anything like me, you know, prior to addiction, it's a lonely place to be. You know, a belief in nothing. This is chaos. It's all coincidence. You know, that's going to lead to me a spiritual death and quite possibly a physical death as well. So, you know, for me, addict and addiction kind of forged me into the person God needed me to be. And you know, that's my path, and I got a long way to go, but I've certainly come a long way from where I was.
Right. Yeah. I'm the same here too. Is I'm not where I want to be, but I'm not where I used to be.
Absolutely.
And that's where it comes down to is don't get so caught up in numbers. Don't get caught up on I want to be 5 years clean. Don't get caught up on that. Just focus on today. People get caught up on so many things. And it's just like, work it every single day. An hour, you know, a minute turns into an hour, turns into a day, a month, a week, a month, you know, it's going to happen. But you got to just have, you know, people say, and I'll tell you this straight up, I can't guarantee you today, Blaine, that I'm going to tell you that I'm going to be sober the rest of my life. I can't guarantee you that, because nobody can guarantee anybody that. But I have faith that I will be.
Sure.
My drive and my goal is that God will carry me through, especially those dark times. So I can't sit there and say, you know what, I'm going to be sober the rest of my life, but I have faith that I will be.
Sure.
And it's putting that faith. And you could put, dude, faith comes back to everything.
Absolutely.
Comes back to every single step we take. Dude, we don't even know if we're going to wake up in the morning.
Sure.
But we don't.
Yeah.
We can go to bed right now. God forbid something happens. Or plane could crash and land on us, you know? Like, but I have faith that God's going to wake me up tomorrow morning. And I'm going to be able to do this right here. And I'm going to be able to help change people's lives. And that's my faith. Okay, that's my faith. I'm not a Bible thumping person. You know,
Right.
if I know who Jesus is, I know who he is to me. This is my personal walk. If that's not your cup of tea, we vibe. I'm cool with that. If you want to know more, hit me up. I'll tell you more about it. But that's where it is. But I'm not no Bible thumper, no this or that. Like, this is just my personal life, you know. And this is, again, just like you spoke to you, like, this is me. This is my personal life. And for me, faith is everything in my life, in my recovery, and everything.
And here's a perfect example. Look at the power of God in your life, Jared. You look at what, 10, 15 years ago, you're stressing about getting your fix and paying up your plug and making sure. For those listening, I get on here with Jared. He's stressing about being on like the biggest podcast on YouTube. He's sitting there going, bro, I'm nervous. I said, why? He said, I'm about to be on the biggest, I just launched an episode of the biggest podcast. So that's God. I mean, look at the power of your story. Your stressors are now that too many people are going to hear your testimony. I mean, that's such a blessing, bro.
It's a good blessing to have,
sure,
bro.
exactly. And it's just perspective, and real quick, you said something that stuck out to me about just for today. What I like to tell our residents is addicts are really, really keen on putting pressure on ourselves, right? I can never drink again. I can never use again. And the truth of the matter is it's not really up to me. And what I mean by that is my focus and my priority is my program. Am I giving maximum effort? Am I making necessary sacrifices? Am I showing up? Am I available and practicing those principles? Now here's the example I use for my residents is if I came home and my house caught on fire and I lost my wife and I lost my child, I'm probably not calling my sponsor. Right. So I'm about 5 years in recovery, not saying I'd relapse, but I'm probably going to cope in a maladaptive way. Right. So here's the important part of the program is it's not the slip. And I tell our residents this all the time, guys, don't focus on the slip. Focus on your ability to respond to the slip. And so here's the deal. I've got 5 years of a program, 5 years of recovery. Sometimes stuff happens. Tragedies happen. You get cancer. Your wife gets hit and killed in a car accident. Sometimes trauma and tragedy strikes. And as people, not as addicts, but as people, we slip. The beauty of recovery, the beauty of God, faith, redemption is that people remember how you responded, not that you slipped. And so, take the pressure off, get lost in your routine, and see where it goes, and to your point, Jared, I have faith that God's going to put me where I need to be. And if that's never using again and never slipping and being able to manage every situation and testify to the best of my ability, then that's great. If God brings me 10 years in recovery, I lose everything, I slip, and then I get back up because I got a program and a connection and a network, then I have faith that God needed me to testify about my journey. It's not easy, but it is a simple program and process.
Yeah, I back that up 100%. Is it doesn't matter how hard you fall, it's how you get back up. We can sit there and we can wallow and we can cry and give ourselves, beat ourselves up and this and that. What's that gonna do? That ain't gonna do nothing. If not, it's probably gonna lead us deeper into it. So, I want to get rid of those emotions and this and that. Okay, you fell. Okay, you're human. Newsflash. You have a brain, you have a heart, you're a human being. You're not a robot.
Absolutely.
You fell. Get your ass back up. I'm sorry, but get up.
Absolutely.
Why do we got to sit there and be like, I just threw away? Okay, so on that, just to touch as a side note, what's your view in a simplified answer? what
We'll see.
What's your view on what's your view on a lapse versus a relapse? Coming to falling, slipping, or did we just have a lapse or did we have a full-blown relapse? What's your opinion on that? Because that was something that we were talking the other day.
I think the distinction is the emotional, mental, and spiritual lapse, which often precipitates the physical relapse. And so what I mean by that is, are you disconnecting from your program? Are you starting to think in a more negative way, in a sicker way? So I think for everybody, the program and the reason people slip and fall and go to 15, 20 treatment centers is that they haven't sufficiently and appropriately address their lapse triggers. And so what I mean by that is, is your job isolating you? Is your relationship with your wife or husband or boyfriend or girlfriend isolating you? You have to start to learn about the things that you do or don't do that precipitate your use. And so for me, that's really the difference. Is I can have a lapse of judgment, but I may not necessarily relapse. Or I could have a lapse of spiritual practices, but I may not relapse. And so for me, Jared, before I got into this, it was my employment. I had a career in health administration, making a little bit more money, but I started to find I couldn't be myself. I couldn't work my program and be honest about who I was and who my past was. And so I could feel myself gravitating towards a bar or towards a restaurant, which is not my issue,
Right.
but I knew the drink would eventually lead to the blunt. The blunt would eventually at some point maybe lead to something worse. So that was my program.
Right.
I have to identify and take a self inventory of where I lapse prior to relapse.
Right. Yeah, and I just wanted to bring that up because because we're talking about if you fall down, get back up.
Sure.
And some people, they're so caught up on it. Damn, I just lost 10 years. Now I'm at square one. I'm at zero, this or that. And it's like, it's not necessarily true.
Absolutely.
It depends on, again, your emotion, your heart, and this, that, and the third. So, but even then, if you do, don't worry about it. Have faith. That guy's going to get you through it, and he's going to get you back to another 10 years, or whatever you got.
And the thing that helped me is, and this is emotions as well as relapses, is it's a message. I mean, I think we look at the message in the mess. I think the reality is that you're depressed for a reason. I mean, I think there's a lot of logistics to it. Hey, Lane, I'm depressed. Yeah, you lost everything. I'd be a little bit concerned if you weren't depressed coming into treatment, or, Lane, I'm anxious. Well, you should be on some level, because that can propel you to be more motivated and work a little harder. And so, I think for a lot of people, you need to understand that your relapse is trying to communicate something to you. The problem is our ego interferes with it. And so sometimes the relapse is, hey, buddy, you got to move. You can't ever go back to your town, or you got to get out of this marriage. But the problem with the ego is that the ego thinks it is a self-differentiated entity. And what I mean by that is the ego tells us that I can work my own different program, right? You have to do 90 and 90. I'll do it my way. You have to go back to these circumstances and go to IOP and do all these things. I'll do it my way. So the ego interferes with the message of relapse and the message of your emotions. They are very logistical, and logical. And so for me, my relapse was, I had to make a wholesale change. I had to move. I had to get different employment, different peer relationships, different community networks. And ultimately, down the road, a different romantic relationship. So, guys, if you slipped, my first question, do you want to get back up? Some people don't, but if you do, you need to be willing to evaluate your slip. It's a learning opportunity, which is hard at first, but it's necessary in the long run.
Yeah, I agree. It is. I hope that, I hope to the people that are listening, the one that, if you guys made it through the whole episode, thank you for just taking the time to sit with us, and and I really hope that this helps somebody. I really hope that this helps guide somebody. Maybe they've been struggling with faith, or with the G word, or this or that, and maybe this. I hope this helps somebody.
Yeah.
I have faith this is going to help somebody.
That's right.
I have faith that God is going to put this episode in front of the person who needs to see
That's
it.
right.
And that's what it comes down to. So I really do, and again, if you need anything, my inbox is open. Lane's is open.
No doubt.
It's the accountability. Make sure you pick up that phone. Pick up that phone. That's the number one thing. If you feel a lapse or relapse or something like that, pick up the damn phone. Yep, pick it up. I tell you this a story before we end.
Sure.
My uncle, same way. So my uncle was like my father. I grew up without my father. My stepfather was in my life. This, that, the third. But my stepfather, prior to my stepfather, now, he passed away when I was 13 years old. I watched him die right in front of my eyes. And that was very, very traumatic. I watched him fall 200 feet off of a bridge into a
Wow.
canyon. So that really messed me up. And so my mom sent me to, and that's when I was 13. That's when I started like spiraling. So my mom sent me to live with my aunt and uncle in California. So my uncle basically became, I lived with my uncle from the time that my aunt and uncle from the time I was 13 to the time I was 18. Um, he basically like became my dad. In that being said, when my uncle found out I was smoking weed, we started smoking weed together. And there was times where he probably offered some more stuff. But I looked up to him so much. So it was really one on the other side. It was really cool that we used together, but we were able to go through this program together. But I remember he was telling me that I called him one day and we just had this conversation and he told me like a month later, he goes, "Dude, do you remember when you called me on this day?" I was like, "Yeah." He goes, "I was really struggling. I was really struggling." He goes, I called my dealer and I was on my way to pick up.
Wow.
But you called me." He goes, "You called me while I was on my way to pick up." He goes, "And by the end of our conversation, I completely had nothing. I had no desire to use."
Wow.
That's the power of picking up that damn phone.
Absolutely.
You, whether it's you calling me or me calling you, we may be going through something, but guess what? That phone call right there could save the whole thing. And he told me, he goes, and I never used. He goes, I didn't care to use. He goes, because we talked about real life, like we talked about this and that. So that just goes to show the power of being accountable and using the phone and reaching out when you're in times like that, this, that, and the third, because you might be that one person that might be that person's lifeline. And that's just speaking of personal testimony that I wanted to share. So
Thanks, Jay. Yeah, I mean, I'm feeling the inspiration, the motivation, and more of a connection just listening to you. And I'm 5 years in recovery, so I think for those who are earlier in the process, that's going to be really, really profound for them. And I'll echo what you said. If you need me, hit me up. You can find me on Facebook. Fleetwood is the name, but the URL is Cackhead, CHAKHEAD, Cackhead. So Facebook.com/Cackhead and message me, guys. I'm a part of your network, for better or worse. I'll certainly listen and provide guidance if you want it, and try to connect you to your community or to groups or therapists or peers and professionals. And it's what I need to do to stay alive. It's what I need to do to stay healthy. So it's a blessing to
yep,
do it.
yep, yeah. No, it's cool, man. It's cool because you and I are we're both 5 years. My 5 years I hit in October 16th was
Congrats,
my
bro.
5 years.
That's
Appreciate
awesome.
it. Yeah, man, I'm 34, getting ready to be 35 right now. My birthday's in a couple
Yeah.
weeks. Actually, this will probably drop before my birthday. So,
Nice, man. Well, happy early birthday
um,
to you, man. You
yeah, appreciate
you
it.
probably live longer
But
than
it's
you plan to at this point.
100%, 100%. But nah, it's cool, man. I'm glad that we were able to vibe and
Yeah,
get that. And I think honestly, I think we were put in each other's lives for a reason,
sure.
and we'll take advantage of that, bro.
Yeah,
And accountability and mentorship and this, that, and the third. So I appreciate you coming on, man, for this
absolutely.
last hour, talking with us and just being real, raw, authentic, man. Just
Absolutely.
yeah. So with that, is there anything else you want to say before we wrap up?
Yeah, yeah, there absolutely is. And that's that. Um, you're loved. I said that on Chuck or Chris's podcast, but I think it's really important to realize that you're worth it. I see it. Jared sees it. Everybody else in your life can see it, but you have to see it. And so if you are struggling, please, 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 please reach out. I'd rather see you on a census than in the cemetery. And so for us, allow us to work our program by reaching out to one of us. God bless you.
Yep.
I hope you have a wonderful day. And let us love you till you love you. And in the
Mm.
meanwhile, we'll be
And
praying for you.
yeah, I'm gonna mimic Fleetwood. You are loved. I really never heard that until I went on Chuck's podcast, Ashes to Awesome, and that quote has stuck with me every single time. You are loved. So remember, you are loved 100%. All right, man. That's what wraps up another episode of the Blacklist podcast. We hope today's conversation left you feeling inspired and uplifted. Remember, each one of us has the power to spread hope and positivity in our own unique way. If you enjoyed today's episode and would like to be a part of the journey, here's how you can help. Make sure to follow us, subscribe on your favorite platform. Don't hesitate to leave a like or a comment. Every single interaction means the world, and you help us reach more people who might need to hear these words. And last but not least, if you know someone who could use a little hope and positivity, please share this podcast with them. Go follow Fleetwood. Go show them some love. And remember, no matter what life throws your way, there's always a reason to hold on to hope. Until next time, peace.